The hand path is something that will significantly alter where the club head is going to come into the golf ball from. So if I am, let's say, somebody who has a certain level of depth to my hands. So depth essentially is how far behind me is my body. The more behind me they are, the deeper my hands are, okay? When you change the depth to your hands, you are going to change the curvature of the golf ball on its own. So if my hands are less deep, and I'm not going to touch my shaft angle, but if my hands are less deep in the downswing, I'm going to swing more steep on the ball and more inward. If I add depth and I bring my hands more in, all of a sudden I'm going to swing a little more shallow on it and a little more from the inside. And I'm not altering the shaft position here, just to give you an idea, right? Now, the problem that you have in your swing is that because you are creating a restricted hip turn, you cannot influence your body to turn enough in the backswing to get the hands into a deep position. So you don't have enough depth at the top of your backswing, in my opinion. When you restrict your hip turn, this is almost always the case. Take a look, okay? One of the things that's going to influence my hand path differently is how my body is rotating in the golf swing. Think about it. If I leave everything alone and I just stretch my arm out here, I guess, when I add rotation, where are my hands going to go? They're going to get behind my body, right? Now, when you have a restricted hip turn, you're keeping the back knee a little too flexed, and you don't get this right hip kind of deep enough, you're restricting your body, the chest and the hips, from turning, which means you're going to restrict your hands from getting further behind you. If I try to get deep with my hands without my body turning, I can only stretch them so far into my chest before I kind of like peak the range of motion I have, right? Well, if I take the same move and now I add hip rotation to this, right? Take a look. As an exaggeration. See that? No hip turn. This is as deep as I can get before I snap my arm off. But if I create a bigger hip turn, my hands get deep. Now, when you have that restricted hip turn, your hands end up going a little more vertically because they can't move around you. Simple as that. So the question then becomes, okay, well, how does this relate to your golf swing, right? Why does this create the transition piece you have? Well, because just like rotating in the backswing wants to influence my hands behind my body, rotating in the downswing wants to do the inverse, which means the more I rotate towards the target in the downswing, the more my body is going this way and then around me. Where do you think my hands are going to want to go? They're going to want to get out in front of me and then around me, right? So just like I rotate in the backswing to get back, if I rotate from here in the downswing, they're going to want to shoot outward this way and then around. When you don't have much depth in the backswing, meaning your hands never get far back, they stay a little too upright and above you, less behind you because of your restricted hip turn, right? When you do that, you are now creating an environment where you cannot physically rotate in the downswing. Because if my hands are up here, right, and I don't get them far back, and this is kind of your backswing to some degree, right? If you don't create that turn and get the hands more behind you and you end up here, well, if I try rotating in the downswing, what's going to happen? My hands are going to start to move out, right? The problem with this is they're going to end up too far out in front of me because they weren't far enough back to begin with, right? If my hands were deeper behind me and I try turning, they'll end up here. But if they're not very deep and I try turning, they're going to end up way out in front of my body, too far. The problem with this is when you have less depth, you cannot hit a push draw. You're going to come down steep and inside on the golf ball. Now, this relates to you for one reason. When you stand over the golf ball, you have an intent in your mind to try to hit a push draw, right? So you're standing over the golf ball and you're saying, okay, when I look at the target, I see the ball starting right and I see it curving back and I see my intent of trying to hit a push draw. And as a result of that, being the athlete that you are, your body is going to adapt to your intent, meaning you are going to subconsciously start reacting with your pivot to try to allow yourself to achieve your desired ball flight. And so when your hands don't get far enough back and they end up too much above you and they're not into this loaded pattern here, right? Well, if you try rotating in the downswing, your hands end up so far out in front of you, you're going to swing across it, steep. You're going to hit these low pulls, these weak fades. It's going to be very wipey. Instead, if you created a bigger turn, well, now you have room to move the hands out when you rotate better, right? So when you're up here, the only way for you to hit your intended shot shape that you're desiring, right? Well, you can't rotate to get there. So what does your body do? It stalls, it slides, and it starts to lean the right shoulder down and back by tilting, right? So you're doing a lot of slidey pull down kind of like this, because what that does is that allows the hands to then drop, Rotation is going to move the hands out, but you can't afford to do that because you're not very deep. So you have to drop them somehow. Dropping your spine and tilting away from the target, that drops them. So when you're up here with this narrow pattern and you're not very deep, well, you're going to slide and you're going to drop the hands to the inside. And all of a sudden, you allow yourself to get your desired shot shape because you are going to move your club path further to the right when you slide and tilt back. Versus if you try rotating, your path is going to get very left, your angle of attack is going to get very steep, and you can't hit your shot shape anymore. So the top of your backswing is creating a necessity for you to slide and tilt away from the target in order to hit your desired shot shape, which is the push draw. You can turn better from the position you're in at the top, but you would play fades 99% of the time. It's as simple as that. So if you wanted to create an environment where that necessity to slide and pull down no longer exists, if you want to create a new environment in your swing where there is no longer a need to pull down and slide, you need to have a bigger, deeper hip turn first, and you need to have the hands a little more behind your body into a deeper position, because then now you have the room to rotate well and have the hands move out and retain your pivot and all of that without sliding and tilting, and you'll be able to do it without the hands ending up way out here because they started from a deeper position first. This does not mean that getting deeper and opening up the hip will guarantee that you're going to rotate better in the downswing. It simply means that you are going to create a new environment where the sliding and the tilting is no longer a necessity. It's no longer needed to hit your shot shape, and therefore you can then learn to get rid of it. Some golfers, if they start getting into a better backswing function for what they want to do, sometimes they adapt organically and actually get better with their pivot. But sometimes they don't, and they need to be taught how to do it. So I'm just giving you some awareness as to how this takes place. So the first thing I would do if I was you and you wanted to learn how to stop sliding and tilting and having all that, shitty timing action at the bottom, well, guess what, dude? You got to learn how to start loading better to the top, creating a nice unrestricted turn with the lower body, nice change in knee flex, right? Left side's going down, right side's extending up, your body's turning a lot, and you're going to influence the hands more across your chest and behind you, and now you have the freedom to actually rotate better in the downswing without the hands ending up too far out in front.